This is the interview for Toldos Israel on November 30th, 2017 with Jonnathan Herlands, Herlands. Okay, this is an interview about your father.
Correct.
Who was another volunteer, shall we say, from America who helped build this country.
That is correct.
So let's start first, just straight biography. I see on your notes he was born in 1905. Just
Right.
give me a little bit of his biography.
Right. So he was born in New York and educated in New York. He went to Erasmus High School. He went to City College, where he excelled. And
where did he grow up in New York?
They started in the Lower East Side, and then they migrated to Brooklyn.
A classic American
story. And he was on the Columbia Law Review at Columbia. So he was really a real scholar, even at a young age. And then he worked in private practice for 3 years for a gentleman who then was tapped by the president to become the U.S. Attorney in New York for the Southern District of New York, the federal prosecutor, like the position that Giuliani held in New York.
And Morgenthau before him.
Morgenthau was the district attorney. District attorney is on the state level.
Right.
U.S. attorney is
right.
the whole for the Southern District. He asked my father, who had worked for him as an associate, a law associate, to come with him.
And this was whom?
This was George Medaglia.
Spell it.
Medalie, who actually turned out to be, was Jewish. And if we have time later, there's an amazing side story, but it's not relevant specifically to the story of my father and Israel. In any event, my father entered the world of the prosecutor. And it's a world that he never left until he became a federal judge. He was a federal prosecutor for a number of years, and then he came to the attention of Fiorello LaGuardia, who was looking to create the Office of City Commissioner of Investigation because
LaGuardia being the mayor of New York.
Mayor of New York, because there was tremendous corruption in the city. And he asked my father to become the first City Commissioner of Investigation.
Why do you think he asked him?
I think he already had a stellar reputation working for the federal prosecutor's office, in which he encountered the most notorious gangsters who were operating on a federal level. Well, it was Murder Incorporated at the time, people like Meyer Lansky, et cetera, people who controlled slot machines, all kinds of, at that time, illegal enterprises.
So when you watched The Godfather, you thought you were watching your own story?
It was interesting. More Elliot Ness and that era. He then went and worked for the state prosecutor as a special prosecutor, investigating the Waterfront Commission, which there was tremendous fraud committed really by organized crime, the mafia at that time.
Payoffs
and corruption, and et cetera. And from that point on, which is really the late 30s, I want to just telescope this for you.
You can elaborate.
During the war years, my father, at that point, was the City Commissioner of Investigation under LaGuardia. And because of his knowledge and experience with the mafia, he actually became involved in a covert project with OSS, which is the Office of Strategic Services.
The pre-runner of the CIA.
That's right, the precursor of the CIA. It was a wartime agency that was involved in coordinating, for the most part, espionage behind enemy lines. But they also were involved in many other espionage and covert activities. And there was a report that German submarines during the war had landed off the coast of Long Island, the Long Island Sound, and that Nazi spies had gained access to the docks through a submarine off the docks. The intelligence became known to people in federal and city government, and my father was asked to participate in a mission to actually recruit members of the mob who he had prosecuted to assist America in getting information about the Nazis and helping to catch them. And to make a long story short, he was very involved with these people who had always been his sworn enemies. They created a dragnet. They were going to deliver ship movement information and dock activity movement information to the Nazis. They were all caught together, and the mob members, who were very patriotic, even though they were also very corrupt, were very, very appreciated for this. And it's one of the reasons why Lucky Luciano, who was key to the operation, was deported and never really served a lot of hard time. It was a reward for what he did for the United States Navy intelligence during that time.
What was there when they were asked by your father to help the sting operation? Why would they say yes?
I think that it appealed to their patriotic bent, and I think that they also realized that they would receive some beneficial treatment under it. And the person that they trusted, despite the fact that he had prosecuted them, was my father, who was just an uncorruptible person. And he gained their respect. So it was an interesting time for my father to have made these contacts in the intelligence community, and gave him, I think, a window in to a whole range of activities that he normally wouldn't have done. I need to segue with you because my father married my mother. My father was a secular Jew. He married my mother, who came from a very Orthodox family. My mother's family name was Bentheim. She was the daughter of Siegfried and Annette Bentheim, who were philanthropic and very involved in America, but also involved in Israel. And apart from the fact that my father swore to my mother that he would become Orthodox, when they married, which he did, he became involved not very long after they were married in an organization called the United Palestine Appeal. He became an executive officer of that on a volunteer basis, and that was the precursor of UJ Federation. It merged with the Joint in the late 1930s, but was one of the organizations that started to fundraise for Israel. And I think—
What year was this?
This was probably 1939, 1940. And so even at that point, my father apparently, it's not something he discussed with me, had started to become interested in support for Israel. And I think he was very influenced by the philanthropy of Siegfried and Annette Bentheim, and my mother's Zionism, and my uncle Charles Bentheim's Zionism and involvement. And in the late 1940s, after the war, you should just know, my father was president of the OU from 1949 to 1951. So he was not only involved on the Israel side, but he was obviously involved in administrative and organizational efforts for the Orthodox Union, and was concerned about the dissemination and spread and vitality of Orthodoxy in our community and across the country.
Finish what happened just before I forget it. The sting operation with the Nazis on the submarine. What was the outcome of that?
The outcome of that was, as I said, that it was a classified operation. And in fact, I only knew about it after my father died in 1969. He never spoke about it. He felt that a federal judge, I'll tell you, he was city commissioner, as I said, under LaGuardia. LaGuardia became a good friend of our family and came to one of our Pesach Starim with his wife. It was remarkable, but well before my time. Governor Tom Dewey heard about Dad, and he was already working as a special prosecutor for the Richmond County, in a Richmond County investigation. And Dewey asked my father to come and become the first New York State Commissioner of Investigation. My father created that position and was State Commissioner of Investigation from 54 to 55. At that time, my father had spoken to Dewey and said that he was very interested in becoming a judge. Dewey recommended him to President Eisenhower. And at that time, there happened to be a slot that needed to be filled in the Southern District. And Eisenhower appointed my father to become the first Orthodox federal judge in the history of the United States. There have been several since, but he was the first. And he was a federal judge from 1955 until his death, unfortunately, in 1969. And I was only 18 when he passed away. So I just didn't really have an opportunity to learn about this from him, to ask. The information really was something that my mother shared with me over time, really after my father passed away. And we knew that they had taken a trip to Israel in 1947. And that's where this picks up, because my father had spent his whole...
I want to just go back a bit.
Okay.
Because you're touching on so many different things, all good. I mean, I want to...
Okay. Sure.
Milk them for what we can. The Nazis thing, I was talking about how many people did they eventually arrest? Did you look it up? You Googled it?
I don't know. I don't know.
Okay.
And in the Wikipedia summary for my father, this operation is not included because this operation is not included because I guess it wasn't part of his, state official duties. This was at that time, a covert operation that was done really outside of the realm of his official state functions for, of course, the United States government. But I would have to look. We did at one point have copies of a letter that he received from the Secretary of the Navy, thanking him and saying that it would not be disclosed. But I don't know, I can't tell you the specifics of how many people were dragnetted in this operation, but the operation was closed down as a result of this.
And no other Nazi submarines came close to this?
That I can't tell you.
Okay.
I can only tell you that the operation that my father was involved in was considered a resounding success.
Okay, here's my next question.
Sure.
The organization he was the precursor of the UGA was called the...
Right, it was called the United Palestine Appeal.
Okay.
Right.
So my question is, because we know famously of the mobsters who helped run arms to Israel in the Yishuv before the state.
Right.
And because of your father's involvement in this sting with the mobsters, my question is, was he part of that operation to help pre-state Israel receive arms, money, etc.?
I can tell you as definitively as someone who didn't speak to him directly can, that my father would never have participated in an operation which could have come back and affected him,
as a state,
or could have been deemed to be illegal. So he was the most meticulously careful. When he was a judge and when he was a prosecutor, he never wanted to be photographed. Sometimes he was photographed taking mobsters in handcuffs, and there was a picture of Herlands of the Herlands Commission. I mean, he was really known in New York. But when my father declined every interview when he was a judge, he never thought it was proper for a judge to be interviewed. He didn't think it was proper to give comments to the press. That judges should simply be above that. And they hear facts and law that are discussed with them in a courtroom. And that they are not politicians, they're not legislators, and they're not political commentators. And he was meticulously clear about that.
So you wouldn't know, even if he would have known about the arms running, but never said anything and looked the other way?
I wouldn't know. I don't think I really, as much as we would love to make our parents,
bigger heroes,
greater than life and more heroic, part of this is also to be faithful to the kind of person that he was. And that would just have not been Dad's MO.
Okay.
It just wouldn't have been him.
Okay.
Wouldn't have been he.
Okay. So what did he do for the do you know what he did specifically for the Palestine?
He must have been involved again
raising money
with fundraising. We were at that time very active in the West Side Institutional Synagogue, which was a synagogue on the west side of Manhattan. That was a very prominent shul. I'm sure that he spoke there. He was a board member of that synagogue. Even in the years that he became a judge, he stayed on. That was the only board that he stayed on as a judge. But obviously it meant something and it had an impact on him. To try to gauge the degree of that impact is very difficult because I didn't speak to him, and And I just don't think that my mother could have calibrated it. But when he was called upon, and the circumstances of that I also don't know, when he was called upon to go to Israel, he went. He went for this project.
Okay, what do you know?
What I know is what my mother told me. And so this is really secondhand. But my mother was also not one to exaggerate. That he had been contacted by whom I don't know, whether it was from someone here who had spoken to someone in Israel, or whether it was from people directly in Israel who knew his involvement because of his involvement in this precursor of the UJA, and because they knew of the involvement of the Bentheim family, that they were assembling a small group of outstanding jurists, lawyers, I don't know if they were judges or not, who were being asked to come to Israel to assist them in establishing a ministry of justice. That was something that Ben-Gurion felt very strongly about, and he wanted to have a brain trust from America of people to assist in that effort. My father had been a federal prosecutor. He had been a state prosecutor. He was a city commissioner of investigation, state commissioner of investigation. No one knew more
About crime.
about the justice system and checks and balances than my father. So he was a great choice for a person to go. And my parents went. They still had, my brother and sister were small at the time. I don't know what arrangements they made. I think she told me that they went for 2 weeks to Israel and spent most of their time in Tel Aviv. My father spending most of his time in a building, which was where all of these meetings were taking place, which was the equivalent of whatever the Kiryah is now, or the building, because she said that at one day he asked to have her come along to meet some of the people that he was working with, and the person who was walking them through had to go somewhere, so my parents kind of wandered along the hall, and they opened the door, and inside were generals and military people, maps on the walls, and they looked at them when they came in, and they said, "You're in the wrong room." And I remember that my mother said to me that she was just taken aback, and she said, "We were just in a war room." And my father said, "Well, that's something that you know and I know, but no one else will know." So, of course, she told this to me, recent history. And then they went back, and my mother had an opportunity to meet the people that my father was working with. I don't know any of their names. And I don't know if my father ever met Ben-Gurion directly, but I do know that after this process was concluded, I believe it was either at the end of the time that my father was there or shortly after my parents returned to America, Ben-Gurion communicated to my father, possibly through someone else, probably through someone else, that he wanted to know if my father would consider becoming Israel's first minister of justice. I think that he was probably asking a number of people. And I don't know if my father was asked first or asked fourth. My mother at that time really did not see herself, I think, living in Israel. My father also was in the midst of a extraordinary career that was moving ever higher, and still very much was interested in becoming a judge, a federal judge here. So for them, the timing wasn't right. But of course, she said that he was so appreciative of having been asked, but he discussed it with no one. He said that he told my mother that he didn't want anyone knowing what was on Ben-Gurion's mind, what was on Israel's mind, what their timing was for what instrumentalities of the government were being set up. And I remember that he told my mother, "You cannot know what information is valuable to an enemy. And any information that we could give in a haphazard way that can fall into the hands of enemies, how they're building their system, what they're basing it on, what are their priorities, is something that's no one's business. It's your business and mine." So that was that was the kind of man. He was not a man of fanfare. He was self-effacing. He once told an audience at the synagogue, he said, everyone always calls me an official, Mr. Judge Herlands, the official. He said, you know what official is? It's a little fish. And it was something I never forgot. Official was a little fish. So.
Do you know the date of the 2 week period when he was?
I don't, but I know that we have movies. There's only one frame of my father in the movies that we think that they took on that trip of Israel. It's barren. And part of it is the view into the old city. But it's in no specific order. Clearly, my father would not have had any photographs taken of him approaching the areas in Tel Aviv where he was working or meeting or anything like that.
Do you know the year? Was it 47, 48?
It was 47.
It was 47.
It was 47.
Do you want to drink something?
No, I'm just...
Yes, your voice is a little bit...
I'm fine. It's just me. So that's really, that's really what, what I know of his involvement at that time.
He didn't speak Hebrew, I take it.
He did not speak Hebrew. But he had a real love for Israel. And I know that during the '67 war, I knew that I wanted to go to Israel. And I said to my father, they need volunteers. He says, now is not when they need volunteers. He says, you educate yourself and, make a positive contribution to Israel in any way you want at a time when you know something and you're able to really contribute to the country. I was in high school at the time. And when I went to Israel in 1969 during the summer on the YU tour and my father was very excited and encouraging for me to go. And that was unfortunately the summer that he passed away. So I think if I would have had time, especially after that summer, to talk to him about my experiences there, I perhaps could have learned more. But
he never received any letter from anybody in Israel?
I have never seen anything. There are nothing in any records about that. I mean, at the time, Israel was it wasn't even in its infancy. It wasn't. I don't know what they had in the way of letters of thanks, things like that. I think that people came there as volunteers. They understood that they had something to do. I don't even know anything about follow-up. I would have thought that if he would have gone there for the establishment of the Ministry of Justice, that there might have been follow-up needs. Maybe that was done by other emissaries. There might have been correspondence, but we have, none of it.
How did he travel to Israel, Palestine?
I believe that they traveled by boat, but I don't know that as a matter of fact.
And he never came back.
And we did come back. We came back in 1960. It was the year that my grandfather Sig Bentheim passed away. He died in March, and my grandmother wanted all of us to come to Israel, including my grandmother. And so my grandmother and my mother and father and I went to Israel in 1960. It was also a very formative summer trip for me during the summer.
You were 7, 8 years old.
I was 9 years old. And again, I have no idea whether during that time that they were there, my father spoke to people to see how the institution had developed, but there was a strong feeling for Israel and a positive feeling to go there at a time when Israel was still considered a fairly dangerous place to go. I mean, I remember standing next to the King David on that fence and looking over, and I remember my grandmother saying to me, when you say "V'techazena einenu v'shuvcha leTzion," he said, "But we will return," and she said, "We will return." And she was a very devout woman, and I remember very, very much those words. And whenever I say "V'techazena einenu," especially when I'm privileged to be here, I think of her.
Your father didn't say to you, "Oh yes, I remember this when I was here 13 years ago. This looks as..."
I wish I could tell you that he did. He just didn't. He just didn't.
It was like a fresh trip, and you were coming for the.
We were coming. It was a fresh trip. I don't believe that they were there in any of the intervening years, but he had a part to play, and just like with really everything else that my father did, he was very, very quiet and unassuming and did not attract attention to himself. And that was just who he was.
How did your mother subsequently describe him in this, or did she, his contribution in this area?
Well, I think that she was extremely proud of my father for many reasons, for his becoming Orthodox. He read the Soncino Talmud at the time to really understand and learn what it meant to be committed to the laws and traditions of Orthodoxy, and quoted from the Talmud in his opinions, in his judicial opinions. So he was an extraordinary man, and I think that she was fiercely proud of all that he had done for Israel, during his life, especially given the fact that it was not something that he was brought up with. I said to my mother how different our life would have been had we decided to go there, if my father would have been asked and would have accepted. And she said it would have been different. It might not have necessarily been better. And she was at peace with the decision that she made. But they, of course, continued, as did our entire family, to be very supportive of Israel and its institutions.
Finish the biography and how he was appointed a federal judge.
He was, the process of becoming a federal judge is that you have to be confirmed by the Senate. And so it's a process. So my father received, a word from the Attorney General of the United States that he had been appointed by Eisenhower, but it was subject to confirmation. And the confirmation process lasted several months, which is not unusual. And
he had to go to testify?
Excuse me?
He had to go testify before?
No, he didn't have to testify. There was no really judicial inquiry committee. I guess if there were concerns about his credentials, which were fairly impeccable, there would have been. And of course, Tom Dewey was right there saying, "This is my state commissioner of investigation. If there's any information you need, feel free to see me." So it went through, fairly rapidly, and he loved being a federal judge. I will just tell you, he had two opportunities to go up to the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit, which is the circuit in the United States. It's New York Circuit. He would have been the first federal judge, Orthodox judge, to be on the Second Circuit Court of Appeals, that's for sure. He loved being a trial judge. He was not interested in hearing appeals. And on both occasions when he was asked, once by the Attorney General of the United States and once by the Chief Judge in the Southern District, Henry Friendly, he said to them that, "I love trying cases. I want to be a trial lawyer." So he was not interested in prestige and status. He wanted to do what he wanted to do. And he did it, and he did it with great distinction.
And if Dewey would have won, he might have been named a Supreme Court judge.
If Dewey would have won, there's no question that he would have either have been potentially a cabinet member or a Supreme Court justice. No question about it. But that's also the way life works. He really had a wonderfully distinguished career, and we're all very proud of him.
How long was he a federal judge before he died?
He was a federal judge for 14 and a half years before he died.
What else do you have in your notes that you want to tell me?
He was also, just the other thing that you should know, again, just in terms of the Jewish connection, when Fiorello LaGuardia was the mayor, my father was the official that he tapped to be involved in bringing the Lubavitcher Rebbe, the Alter Rebbe, to this country.
In 1940?
In 1940. And that was also something that my wife's grandfather, Sam Kramer, who was one of the handful of people who were directly involved in bringing the Alter Rebbe to this country. And my father became a friend of Sam Kramer well before Rachel and I were born. And so it's just an interesting historical connection. And my father was just involved Jewishly and involved religiously. Whatever project he undertook, he just dove into it. There was no doing anything halfway from my father. And
yet he would never talk about it.
And yet he was extremely private. I think that probably was also the time. You know, now everything is discussed. Lots of things weren't discussed. Look at the people who never talked, unfortunately, about the Holocaust to their own children who went through that trauma. Kids never heard about it. And I just think that there was less of that discussion between parents and children. That's what I have to surmise. But what an opportunity it would have been for us to really, know more about the specifics of what he did.
But he also wanted you to help contribute, because he said to you during the 60 War, you do it when you have a lot to contribute, not just now as a volunteer.
Yes, I mean he wanted us to continue to be involved. He didn't want to dampen my enthusiasm, but he certainly wouldn't have let his 15-year-old son go to Israel at that time. But then when this opportunity came in 1969, when the country was still really fresh from the war, he didn't give a concern about the danger. I mean, it wasn't that he wasn't concerned, but the enthusiasm that he exhibited for my going certainly trumped any concerns that he, at least verbalized about my going. And
you knew at the time his career, like the Palestine Fund?
I really didn't. It was really information that I spoke to my mother about after my father died.
And how did it hit you then when you found out?
I wasn't surprised. I was very, very proud, and I was also very sad, because, like with many things, there was so much I would have loved to have spoken to my father about. I didn't have the chance. I didn't have the time. But I feel that spark, and I feel that spark and manifestation that was within him was within his children, and that's part of the reason. Of course, also the Zionist feelings of Rachel's family. That's why we're here. That's why we have a place, an apartment here.
Right.
That's why we're involved in a number of projects here on an ongoing basis, because we really feel that this is the continuation of a tradition.
And you taught your kids about your father's involvement?
They all know about it as much as we know. And of course, they're all, very, very proud and to be part of that tradition. And our children love Israel as well.
What else do you have on
That's
this?
really, I think I've really given you all of it. It was just a chronology that I wanted to share with you, just so that I didn't get out of order in terms of things. But I think...
what didn't I ask you that I should have asked you?
I think you've really covered it.
Rachel? Give it
Had Johnny's father taken the job here, we never would have
met?
That's right.
No, that's always true.
Or had he become an appeals, he could have easily, had Dewey won, he would.
Yes.
We would have moved to
become a
Washington,
Supreme Court
for
judge.
sure.
He
Yes.
might have been.
Yes.
So there was good reason for Dewey not to win.
Yeah, we don't know. Yeah.
Is your mother still alive?
No.
Does he have pictures?
Do you have any pictures? Pictures of your father?
Dad.
I didn't even think about this to
You
say
know, we
something.
don't have pictures here.
Here, it's back in
really
New York.
Interesting.
I have
you know.
pictures of him in his judicial robes. I have pictures
How
of
would you
him with
send
his
us
law
a picture
clerks.
from
I have,
the OU? We can.
That's that time period. Okay.
yeah,
So
I mean, at the
we can
OU's,
send you pictures.
at the
We'll
OU's
send you
office,
pictures.
there's a room with a picture of all of the presidents of the OU
okay.
from the beginning.
Got it.
My father is the third, and his picture is there.
But the video footage you said, have you digitized it?
We
from
just-
1947?
It's first of all, it said 49, but I don't know exactly what that particular
know.
one. But who knows? But we just digitized that piece of it. There may be something else that somebody else has in your family. We'll have to check,
I
Jeffrey.
don't know.
But it was just amazing. The panorama of Jerusalem is like, what?
That would
That's
be a wonderful
amazing
thing to
see.
have.
Yeah.
To see.
I
and
meant to give it to,
It's okay.
to Eric, but I
Yeah.
have it. I have
Here's
it.
the
Yeah, we
notebook.
have
I
it.
can just send
Just-
it to you.
yes,
We can just
it-
send that to you,
Yes,
for
yes,
sure.
they'll have it in the archives. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. I wish I could tell you more. I wish I could tell you that I had, direct discussion about this with my father, but I didn't.
You know,
I was-
Johnny is, that we have to understand about Johnny. He would be living here if we,
Didn't have a life there.
if he could, maybe if he had a wife who was more like, okay, sure. But
Yeah,
he is so, I really feel Israel is within his gut.
That's obvious.
And I really started to think about it. It's really your father that kind of-
Osmosis gave it to you,
It
100%,
did,
100%.
it did. It's,
If I knew, if I had my father, they worked on the Palestine Fund in 19. I mean, that's what I have is my mother couldn't get into the rally at Madison Square Garden in '47. She was outside the building. They couldn't. So in other words, to me, that's already something. That she
Right.
was a teenager and
Sure.
she'd gone down to the garden for that
Yeah.
rally.
Sure.
So, and she said to me this week, she remembers the partition plan like yesterday. She said it was Friday. She lived in Williamsburg. She said people kept the radio on Shabbat. She gave me the name of some Rav I never heard of, but he's a big guy in Williamsburg. She said he kept his radio on that Shabbat.
Wow.
Of course.
I mean, that's just,
I know. It's amazing.
yeah,
So,
yeah. Okay.
So there it
This
is.
is good. No, it's wonderful. Thank you. This is great.
Just a little.
How often do
tidbit.
you come to Israel?
2 or 3 times a year?
3 is pushing it,
Yeah, 2. Yeah.
I would say no. If we go on the simcha track. If there's,
Yes.
we come for a wedding. So if there's a lot of simchas in the course of a year,
We could come more
we'll be
often.
here.
Right.
Sometimes we're here once a year. We try to come twice. We were here last June for Johnny's birthday, and we made reservations. Unlike us, because we're always last minute, for April 15th for the 70th. We want to be here
You fair.
for,
Very good.
and April 15th is guess what?
Tax day.
So I said to Johnny, you have to imagine the 15th is on Friday because we're leaving. Yes, on the 13th, we're leaving on Sunday for Israel for the week. So we'll be here. We've never been here for Yom Ha'atzmaut or Yom HaZikaron.
Oh, it's nice. It's
Yeah,
something.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
something
yeah.
to see.
So it's gonna
Absolutely.
be, yeah.
We were never here for the sirens?
That's Yom HaShabbat.
Ah.
That's right after Pesach.
Right.
Okay.
We've never been here for Yom Ha'atzmaut.
That's
Uh-huh.
right.
I've
That's
never
right.
been here.
No,
It's-
You may have been here.
I've never been here with.
in the 1960s. Before
No, never. That was the only trip.
It's not before I joined. You can tell you the truth.
Right. Exactly. Okay. Beseder. That's very good.
Okay.
We did good. Okay.
Good.
It
Thank you.
is chaval, but that's
It is
something.
chaval. It's just
It's something. A piece.
it's a small
and it's-
piece, and it's also for people who weren't from people who were real born in America. It's not Europeans that that came here and after the war and then were drawn. This is a red-blooded American born in this country, and
Not a
and-
redneck.
Did
No,
he?
but-
Did he describe to you what it was like growing up on Lower East Side in the 1905 to
He,
19?
he actually said one story. He was a gifted pianist. In fact, my parents met playing piano at a dinner party.
We have 2 Steinways. You can have one of them.
Yeah. So, and they each came with another date. And my mother had been asked to play piano for these people. They were both psychiatrists. Her name was Backwin, I remember. And she started playing, and my father saw her and started listening to her. And he moved away from wherever his date was and started playing the upper register of the same piano. And he introduced himself to her. And I don't know, they went out on a date. It was a very, very romantic. Courtship at the time, and they were a wonderful couple.
He was irreligious on Lower East Side. That was an exception.
He was.
In other words, most families
He was
very frum.
He was not religious, and I think life was hard, and everyone worked hard. He had 3 siblings, all of whom were outstanding. He had a sister. They were all, distinguished academically. They were all Phi Beta Kappa from college in their junior
No
year.
pressure on this family.
My aunt was a chaired professor of medieval literature at NYU. My uncle was a professor of dentistry at Columbia, and also had a private practice. And my other uncle, Herbert Herlands, who practiced law with my father here, Herlands and Herlands, for a short while in the 1940s, moved to California and became a Superior Court judge in Orange County in Santa Ana. So they were bi-coastal Judge Herlands. So they were all really outstanding, but they worked hard. But they were not,
I was just gonna
none
ask.
of them.
Zionistically, nothing.
Nothing. Zero. Zero.
But when you found out, when they found out that your father had worked for the Palestine Fund,
It wasn't their thing.
huh?
They were involved in their careers. They were not Jewish. They were not involved in Jewish organizational, communal work at all. It was only Dad. It was only Dad.
It was cerebral. It was your.
It was cerebral. It was also, from my father, but it was also the family that he had married into.
Yes.
You can't do those things, I think, without the support of your spouse and family. And they, I don't know if my father was close to my uncle, whether they spoke at any time, Charlie Bentheim and my father. My father was close to Ludwig Jesselson and Max Stern also. Those are all part of one group of philanthropists.
Yes.
And they were very close to my father. Like Liddy was a relative, but through the Benheims, but Max and my father and my parents were extremely close, extremely close. We went away together for Pesach to the Brunswick Hotel in New Jersey. We had Pesach together, years and years and years with the Stern family. So there was a lot of support for my father being involved in those kinds of institutions. But he was a brilliant man.
Did you have symbols of Israel in your house growing up?
I can't say that we did. I can't say that we did. I mean, yeah, something, I have to tell you, I went to Maple Lake Camp. It was a long time ago.
I remember Camp Maple Lake.
The one thing about Israel during the summer was there was a troupe of dancers, kids, who came from Israel to sing Israeli songs. And everyone was bored. Everyone laughed. Everyone was bored. It was so not nice the way the kids acted. This was 1960 to 1965. 1967, something happened, obviously. That changed everything. Until then, Israel was just not something. I mean, I'm even trying to think in MDS. How much discussion of Israel was there? I just don't. Were you at MDS too?
Yeah, we were in the
We went through the system together. There was just the concept of what it is to be Tzioni, to talk about the return to Eretz Yisrael, what it meant to think about as to long for being there. Did any of that come through? I don't remember it if it did. Nothing. And Israel Independence Day, until we started to have marches, which was really only after 67 also. There were no marches for Israel before, right?
No, there were, because there's a picture of me in 8th grade marching with the Israel when it was on Riverside Drive. There
Okay,
were.
so maybe
But it was on Riverside Drive.
it wasn't on Fifth Avenue.
Yeah, I don't know the year.
It was just a different. It was the event that was the most transformative event in all of our lives.
Yes. Do you think had you known about your father's involvement when you were younger than the Six-Day War, it would have impacted you where you would have felt more Zionistic?
It might have. If it wouldn't have been for Rachel and falling in love with her, I might have really just come here. When I went in 1960, even when I went in 1960, it was such an amazing trip. I remember so many things about that trip. Very, very much influenced by Grandma Bentheim. And she spent time with me there. We davened with her in the morning. She davened 3 times a day. I'd never said mincha, really. Wasn't something we did at MDS either. She davened mincha, bizman, She was a very, very big influence on all of her grandchildren. Bentheims too will tell you that. Jackie, Aviva, Debbie, Judy, they'll all tell you. She was an extraordinary influence on our lives. And I loved it here. When I came in 1969, I just fell in love with everything about this place. And I saw myself here. And I just I could see myself fighting for the country, being involved in the country, doing and everything. And then, you come back and you go to school, go to college, and you have the fortune to meet the woman of your dreams.
And
I worked,
make a living.
and everything else.
Now that you're so involved, it must be an interesting thing in your head to say to yourself, yes, my father was a silent partner in the creation of this state. That I didn't know about, that he wasn't a braggart, so I never knew, and yet all that you have now, personal involvement, your father was doing when he was younger, and then you didn't know about that he was a silent partner to the establishment of the state.
It is, and there were so many silent partners and so many unsung heroes, and he was happy to be an unsung hero. Right, all of the stones leading up to the Mizbeach, they're all not hewn. They're all different sizes, right? That's what it says. They're all just not cut the same way, and they're all next to each other. And together they create the foundation for the Mizbeach. I feel that way about my father and all of these other people. They all were these unhewn, these cut stones, each one of them with their own edges that made them special. They weren't all smooth. They didn't all look at the world the same way. They had different perspectives. My father was the perspective of someone who grew up not religious, and looking at this, now and what needed to be done, how he could influence. Other people came to it from different points of view, and together they worked shoulder to shoulder to create this. So to be part of that is just incredible, just incredible. So we're all,
And to be part of Toldos is also incredible.
to be ferociously proud, ferociously proud of that now. Am I off camera or am I still on camera?
Still on. This is good.
So just to tell you, I'm involved in a couple of small foundations. This has nothing to do with my father, but it does have something to do. And one of the things that we do is we refurbish recreational facilities on military bases. And we do it quietly because the people whose names are there are no longer alive. And we work closely with the FIDF, and we identify bases. Some of them were bases that had involvement from my brother-in-law, Benny Shatofsky, Benny Shalev, and others that need, facilities, recreational facilities, running space, treadmills, exercise machines. We've even refurbished recreational space on a submarine. And we provide the funds for those recreational facilities. And there's a small plaque that goes on it with the name in memory of those people, who's the name of the foundation, called the Stanger Foundation. And that's it. No one sees it. No one from UGA goes to those places. They're inside. Several of them are inside a mountain. And I've been there. You just go for the dedication. And every time I do that, I think of my father. Because I think that's just, I don't know if you could imagine recreational bases, recreational facilities on military bases, but everyone chooses their own thing. This was something that I wanted to do. And it's something that we continue to be involved in now, and also involved in a variety of mechina programs for wayward youth. They get trained to get ready for pre-army training and other things. And I attribute all of that. Didn't come from me. Who am I? It came from things that we saw in our family. Quiet philanthropy. It's not even my money, so it's not even my philanthropy. It's someone gave me this incredible zechus to spend their money. So we continue to be involved, and I'm gonna do that until I take my last breath. My goal is to refurbish every military facility in the country. I don't know if I'll be able to do it, but that's the goal.
And where, after you take your last breath?
You're gonna do it.
Where are you gonna be?
What?
In Israel.
In Israel.
We
That's
put
right.
graves!
Eretz HaChaim, here we come.
Which actually are worth something, because now they're tunneling down.
Oh, yes.
So we could,
Yep.
Wetzler is.
So this is where I don't want to be. I don't want to be in Cypress Hills on the Jackie Robinson Parkway in Interborough. That's where everyone else is. I belong off of Route 3.
We'd rather live here than die
I belong in Beit Shemesh. That's where I belong. After.
My mother's parents are in that cemetery. Yeah.
So
Well, at least you'll visit us.
yeah, someone will visit us. That's right. No pressure.
Very good. Very good.
Anyway.
Thank you, Jonathan. Very good. Very
Okay.
good. You said. Very good.
That's it?
Yep.